The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the Riverside Hotel ballroom, sending crystal shards skittering across the polished surface like tiny diamonds catching the light. But nobody noticed the broken glass. Every eye in the room was fixed on my wife Jenna, perched comfortably on Caleb Frost's lap, her arms draped around his neck like they'd been practicing this pose for months. "Oh my God, Evan!" Jenna giggled, her voice carrying that particular pitch it reached after 3 glasses of wine. "You should see your face. Caleb's like a brother to me. Right, babe?" Caleb's hand rested on her thigh, his fingers drumming a lazy rhythm against the silk of her dress. "Absolutely. Just keeping your wife comfortable, buddy." His grin was all teeth and smugness, the kind of expression that made you want to rearrange it with a crowbar. The marketing department's annual gala was supposed to be our night out together. Jenna had spent 2 hours getting ready, curling her auburn hair into perfect waves, applying makeup with surgical precision. She'd looked stunning in her emerald dress, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary. Now she looked stunning on another man's lap. "Evan, don't be such a stick in the mud," Melissa chirped from across the table. Jenna's best friend since college, Melissa had perfected the art of stirring the pot while maintaining plausible deniability. "It's just harmless fun. You trust your wife, don't you?" I forced a smile, the kind that felt like swallowing glass. Of course I trust my wife." What I didn't trust was the way Caleb's thumb was tracing small circles on Jenna's leg, or how she leaned into his touch like a cat seeking warmth. Tyler, Jenna's colleague from the creative department, raised his glass. "To comfort zones. May we never leave them." The table erupted in laughter, everyone except me. I was too busy watching my wife nuzzle Caleb's neck. "Speaking of comfort," Jenna said, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a whisper, but carried clearly across the table. "Caleb gives the most amazing back rubs. His hands are magic." The construction project manager in me was used to reading blueprints, understanding how structures fit together, spotting the weak points that could bring everything crashing down. Right now, I was looking at the architectural plans of my marriage, and I could see exactly where the foundation was cracking. "I bet they are," I said, standing up. "I'm going to get some air." "Don't be dramatic, honey," Jenna called after me, not bothering to move from her comfortable position. "We'll be right here when you get back." I walked through the hotel lobby, past the fountain where water trickled endlessly over smooth stones, past the concierge desk where a young woman in a crisp uniform smiled sympathetically. The autumn air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside, crisp and clean after the suffocating atmosphere of the ballroom. My phone buzzed. A text from Rita, my sister. "How's the fancy party? Try not to let Jenna spend your entire paycheck on wine." I started to type back something reassuring, something normal, but stopped. Instead, I found myself staring at the hotel's reflection in my phone screen, the warm lights spilling out onto the sidewalk like golden honey. When I returned to the table 20 minutes later, Jenna had finally moved from Caleb's lap to her own chair, but she'd scooted it close enough that their knees touched. Caleb was telling some story about a client meeting, gesturing with his hands, and Jenna was hanging on every word like he was reciting Shakespeare. "There he is," Melissa announced. "We were just talking about you, Evan. Caleb was saying how lucky you are to have such a fun wife." "Lucky," I repeated, sitting down. That's one word for it. The evening dragged on with the momentum of a funeral procession. More wine, more laughter, more casual touches between my wife and her brother. By the time we got home to our suburban house with its perfectly manicured lawn and 2-car garage, I felt like I'd been watching my life through someone else's window. "You were so weird tonight," Jenna said, kicking off her heels in the entryway. "Caleb was just being friendly. You know how touchy-feely people get when they drink." "Right. Friendly." She turned to face me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Annoyance? It was gone too quickly to identify. "Don't make this into something it's not, Evan. I married you, didn't I?" She headed upstairs, leaving me standing in our kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, all the markers of a successful life. I poured myself a whiskey and sat at the breakfast bar, staring out at our backyard where the motion sensor light had clicked on, illuminating nothing but empty grass and shadows. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a group text to the marketing department crew. "Thanks for an amazing night, everyone. Can't wait to do it again soon." The message was from Jenna, sent at 1:47 a.m. I looked at the timestamp, then at the stairs where my wife had disappeared an hour ago, supposedly to bed. That's when I heard the soft ping of another notification from upstairs. From our bedroom, from Jenna's phone. The next morning arrived with the kind of gray drizzle that made everything look washed out and tired. I was already dressed and drinking coffee when Jenna stumbled into the kitchen, wearing my old college t-shirt and looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "God, my head," she groaned, opening the cabinet where we kept the aspirin. "How much did I drink last night?" Enough to get comfortable on Caleb's lap. She froze, her hand halfway to the medicine bottle. Are we really going to do this? It was nothing, Evan. A stupid party joke. Funny how your jokes always seem to involve other men's hands on your body. You're being paranoid. She shook out 2 pills and swallowed them dry. Caleb's a friend, a good friend who happens to be going through a rough divorce. I was being supportive. Supportive. Is that what we're calling it? She grabbed her coffee mug, the one with "World's Best Wife" printed on the side, a gag gift from last Christmas that felt less funny every day. I don't have time for this. I have a presentation at 9. After she left, I sat in our empty house listening to the grandfather clock tick in the hallway. The sound had never bothered me before, but now each tick felt like a countdown to something I couldn't name. At the construction site, Darius, my foreman, noticed my mood immediately. You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes, boss. Everything okay at home? Darius had worked with me for 5 years, ever since I'd started my own contracting business. He was built like a linebacker, with hands the size of dinner plates and an uncanny ability to read people's moods. Just tired, I said, but he wasn't buying it. Uh-huh. This got anything to do with that fancy party your wife dragged you to? I told him about the evening, about Caleb and the lap-sitting and Jenna's casual dismissal of my concerns. Darius listened while we supervised the crew installing drywall in what would become someone else's dream home. Man, that's rough, he said when I finished. But maybe she's right. Maybe it was just party bullshit. Maybe. But maybe wasn't good enough anymore. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I used the Find My Phone app to check Jenna's location. She was supposed to be at the office preparing for her presentation. Instead, the little dot on my screen showed her at Riverside Towers, the upscale apartment complex downtown. Building 4, Unit 403. I sat in my truck outside the complex for 20 minutes, watching the entrance. At 3:30, Jenna emerged, followed 30 seconds later by Caleb Frost. They didn't leave together, but they didn't need to. The way Jenna smoothed her hair, the way Caleb adjusted his tie, the careful distance they maintained between each other, it all told a story I didn't want to read. That evening, Jenna came home with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and a smile that seemed a little too bright. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, setting the containers on our dining room table. "Productive. How was your presentation?" "Great. Really great. The client loved the campaign concept. We might get the account." "That's wonderful." "Where did you have the meeting?" A tiny pause, barely perceptible. "At their offices downtown. Why?" "Just curious. I thought about stopping by to take you to lunch, but I got busy with the Henderson project." Another pause, longer this time. "That's sweet, but you know how crazy my schedule gets. We ate dinner making small talk about work and weekend plans, but I was thinking about Riverside Towers, about Unit 403, about the careful way my wife was avoiding eye contact. After dinner, while Jenna was in the shower, I did something else I'd never done before. I looked through her phone. The text messages with Caleb went back 3 months. At first, they were innocuous. Work stuff, funny memes, casual conversation, but as I scrolled deeper, they became something else entirely. "Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You're incredible. E is working late again. Want to grab dinner? Your husband is lucky he doesn't know what he's missing." The most recent exchange was from today. "Caleb, thanks for the stress relief. I needed that." "Jenna, anytime. That's what friends are for." "Caleb, some friend. Remind me to return the favor tomorrow." I heard the shower turn off upstairs and quickly put the phone back where I'd found it. When Jenna came down in her robe, toweling her hair dry, I was sitting in my recliner pretending to watch the news. "I'm exhausted," she said, settling onto the couch. "This account is going to be the end of me." "I'm sure Caleb will help you work through the stress." She looked at me sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just that he seems very supportive." "He is. He's a good friend and a great colleague. Not everyone has ulterior motives, Evan." I nodded and turned back to the television, where a weatherman was predicting rain for the rest of the week. Seemed about right. Rita called the next morning while I was having coffee and staring at the rain streaming down our kitchen window. "You sound like hell," she said without preamble. Rita had never been one for small talk. "Good morning to you too, sis." "Don't sis me. What's wrong? And don't say nothing, because I've known you for 34 years, and you get that particular tone in your voice when something's eating at you." I told her everything. About the party, about Caleb, about the apartment complex and the text messages. Rita listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. "Jesus, Evan," she said when I finished. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to pretend I never saw anything. And the other part? The other part wants to burn everything down. Well, before you go full scorched earth, maybe you should talk to her. Give her a chance to explain. But I'd tried that already, hadn't I? And all I'd gotten were lies wrapped in indignation. That afternoon, I drove to Murphy's, the bar where Jenna's work crowd liked to hang out after particularly stressful days. I'd been there before for office parties and retirement celebrations, but never alone, never hunting for information. The bartender, a guy named Sean with sleeve tattoos and a friendly demeanor, recognized me immediately. "Hey, Evan, haven't seen you in a while. Where's Jenna?" "Still at work." Actually, I was hoping to surprise her. Has she been in recently? Sean's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "Yeah, she's been in a few times this week. Usually with that guy from her office. Caleb, I think?" "Right, Caleb. They've been working on a big project together." "Must be some project," Sean said, wiping down a glass with unnecessary thoroughness. They seem pretty focused on each other. I ordered a beer and sat at the end of the bar, watching the early happy hour crowd filter in. At 5:30, Tyler from Jenna's creative department walked in, spotted me, and came over. "Evan, what brings you to our little watering hole?" Tyler was one of those people who tried too hard to be everyone's friend, the kind of guy who remembered your birthday and always laughed a little too loudly at jokes. But he also had a reputation for knowing everything about everyone in the office. "Just grabbing a drink?" "Jenna's working late again." "Yeah, she's been putting in crazy hours lately. That Meridian account is a real ball buster." He ordered a martini and glanced around the bar. "You know, it's funny. I always thought she and Caleb would end up together, back when they first started working together. They have this chemistry, you know?" "Chemistry." "Oh, not like that," Tyler backpedaled quickly, but his eyes said something different. "I just meant professionally. They work well together. Complement each other's strengths." "Right. Professionally." Tyler excused himself to join some colleagues at a table near the window, but not before giving me a look that suggested he'd said more than he'd intended. I finished my beer and drove home, where I found Jenna in our home office, laptop open, papers scattered across the desk. "Hey, honey," she said without looking up. "How was your day?" "Interesting." I stopped by Murphy's for a drink. Now she looked up, her fingers frozen over the keyboard. "Oh? That's not really your scene." "No, it's more your scene, isn't it?" "You and Caleb's scene." "Evan, we've been through this." "Have we?" "Because I'm starting to think we haven't been through anything. I'm starting to think we've been dancing around the truth while you've been dancing around with someone else." She closed the laptop and turned to face me fully. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking you to tell me the truth about Caleb, about the apartment complex, about why you've been lying to me for months." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Riverside Towers. Unit 403. Ring any bells?" For a moment, she looked like she might confess, might break down and tell me everything. Instead, she stood up and crossed her arms. "Are you having me followed? Are you checking up on me like I'm some kind of criminal? Are you acting like one? I can't believe this. I can't believe you don't trust me enough." "Trust?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about trust? Let's talk about trust, Jenna. Let's talk about how I trusted you when you said Caleb was just a friend. Let's talk about how I trusted you when you said you were working late. Let's talk about how I trusted you when you sat on another man's lap and told me it was nothing." "It was nothing? Then why are you lying about it?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. We stood there in our home office, surrounded by the detritus of our shared life. Photos from our honeymoon, books we'd read together, the little cactus she'd bought because she said it reminded her of my stubborn personality, and I realized that everything felt like evidence from a crime scene. "I think you should stay at Rita's tonight," she said finally. "This is my house too, Jenna." "I know, but I need space to think. We both need space to think." I packed a bag while she sat in the living room staring at her phone. As I was leaving, I turned back. For what it's worth, I hope I'm wrong about all of this. I hope there's an explanation that makes sense, that makes this all just a misunderstanding. She looked up at me, and for a second I saw the woman I'd married, the one who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal fries from my plate. "So do I," she said quietly. But we both knew I wasn't wrong. Rita's apartment was a study in organized chaos, books and art supplies scattered across every surface, half-finished paintings propped against the walls. She worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm, and her living space reflected her creative energy. "You look like someone ran over your dog," she said, handing me a beer and settling onto her couch with a glass of wine. "Feels about right." I told her about the confrontation with Jenna. about the lies and deflections and the way she'd turned my questions back on me like I was the one doing something wrong. Classic gaslighting, Rita said. Make you question your own perceptions, make you feel guilty for not trusting her. It's manipulation 101. Maybe I should have handled it differently. Maybe I should have. Stop. Rita held up her hand. Stop making excuses for her. You're not the one who's been sneaking around. You're not the one who's been lying. You're not the one who made your marriage vows mean nothing. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain against her windows and the distant sound of traffic. So what's your next move? She asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to fight for her, for us. But how do you fight for someone who doesn't want to be fought for? Maybe the question isn't whether you should fight for her. Maybe the question is whether you should fight for yourself. The next morning, I went back to the house to get more clothes. Jenna's car wasn't in the driveway, but Caleb's BMW was parked across the street. I sat in my truck for 5 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, imagining what I'd find if I walked through my own front door. Instead, I drove to the construction site, where Darius took one look at my face and handed me a hammer. Sometimes the best therapy is honest work, he said. Help me frame out this bedroom. We worked in companionable silence for an hour, the rhythm of hammer on nail providing a kind of meditation. But my phone kept buzzing with messages, and finally Darius told me to answer it. The first message was from Melissa. Heard you and Jenna are having problems. Hope you guys work it out. She's lucky to have you. The second was from Tyler. Hey man, sorry if I said anything weird yesterday. Didn't mean to stir up trouble. The third was from a number I didn't recognize. This is Sean from Murphy's. You should know that your wife and her friend were here last night. Thought you should know. I stared at that last message for a long time. Jenna had asked me to leave so she could have space to think, but apparently her thinking required Caleb's input. Bad news? Darius asked. The worst kind. The kind that confirms everything you already knew but didn't want to believe. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Detective Vance, a private investigator I'd worked with on an insurance fraud case a few years back. He was ex-military, methodical, and completely without illusions about human nature. Evan Mallory, he said when he answered. Been a while. Let me guess. You need someone followed. My wife. Ah, the classic. When do you want me to start? Yesterday. Vance was expensive but thorough. Within 48 hours, he had a complete dossier on Jenna and Caleb's relationship. Photos of them entering and leaving the apartment complex, credit card receipts from romantic dinners, hotel records going back 3 months. I'm sorry, man, he said, sliding the folder across the table at the diner where we'd met. It's never easy to see it in black and white. I opened the folder and immediately wished I hadn't. There they were, my wife and her brother, holding hands as they walked into the Riverside Hotel, kissing in the parking lot of Murphy's, Caleb's hand on her lower back as they entered his apartment building. There's more, Vance said. Financial records show she's been paying for some of their hotel rooms. And there's this. He handed me a printout of text messages, somehow obtained through methods I didn't want to know about. Jenna. E is getting suspicious. We need to be more careful. Caleb. Maybe it's time to tell him. I'm tired of sneaking around. Jenna. Not yet. I need to figure out how to handle this without losing everything. Caleb. What about what I want? What about us? Jenna. You knew the situation when this started. Don't make it complicated. I closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. What do I owe you? Consider it a professional courtesy. But Evan, whatever you're thinking of doing, be smart about it. Don't let anger make you stupid. I drove back to Rita's apartment with the folder on the passenger seat, feeling like I was transporting evidence of my own execution. Rita was waiting with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. You look worse than yesterday, she said. I didn't think that was possible. I showed her the photos, the text messages, the hotel receipts. She looked through everything twice, her expression growing darker with each page. That manipulative bastard, she said finally. She's been playing you this whole time, making you feel guilty for not trusting her while she's been screwing around behind your back. The worst part is the text messages. She's not even conflicted about it. She's just trying to figure out how to manage the situation to her advantage. So what are you going to do? I looked at my sister, at her fierce loyalty and righteous anger, and I made another decision that would change everything. I'm going to give her exactly what she deserves. The plan came together with the kind of precision I usually reserved for construction projects. Every detail mapped out, every contingency considered, every potential weakness reinforced. First, I needed allies. Real ones, not the fake friends who'd been enabling Jenna's behavior while pretending to support our marriage. I started with Sean, the bartender at Murphy's. He'd already shown he was willing to share information, and he had a front row seat to Jenna and Caleb's public displays of affection. I always wondered why she'd bring him in when she was supposed to be married to you, he said when I met him for coffee. It didn't sit right with me, you know? The way they'd sit in the corner booth, all over each other like teenagers. How long has this been going on? Months, at least since summer. Maybe longer. They weren't exactly subtle about it. Next, I reached out to Tyler. His guilt over our conversation at Murphy's made him eager to help, and his position in Jenna's department gave him access to information I needed. I feel terrible about all this, he said when we met at a different bar across town. I should have said something sooner, but it wasn't my place, you know? What can you tell me about their work relationship? Honestly, it's been affecting the whole department. They disappear for long lunches. They're always having private meetings. They finish each other's sentences in ways that make everyone uncomfortable. And Jenna's been getting preferential treatment from Caleb ever since he got promoted to creative director. Preferential treatment how? Better assignments, flexible schedule, first choice on the good projects. Meanwhile, the rest of us are working our asses off while she coasts on her relationship with the boss. This was even better than I'd hoped. Jenna wasn't just cheating on me, she was using the affair to advance her career at the expense of her colleagues. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Mr. Greeley, our elderly neighbor who walked his ancient beagle past our house 3 times a day, knocked on Rita's door while I was staying there. I hope I'm not overstepping, he said, clutching his dog's leash with arthritic hands, but I thought you should know that there's been a lot of activity at your house while you've been away. Different cars, people coming and going at all hours. What kind of people? Well, there's that fellow with the fancy German car. He's been there most nights this week. And yesterday afternoon, I saw your wife loading suitcases into her trunk. Suitcases. She was planning to leave, probably with Caleb, probably after she figured out how to extract maximum financial benefit from our divorce. That night, I called Jenna for the first time since I'd moved out. Evan, she said, and I could hear surprise in her voice. I was wondering when you'd call. We need to talk. About us, about our marriage, about what happens next. I think that's a good idea. Do you want to meet somewhere neutral? Maybe Murphy's? Of course she'd suggest Murphy's, where she and Caleb had been playing house while I was sleeping at my sister's apartment. Actually, I was thinking we could meet at home. Our home. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. A pause. Okay, that sounds good. Evan, I'm glad you called. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I have some things I need to tell you. I'm sure you do. After I hung up, I called Vance. I need one more favor. Tomorrow night, 7:30. I need you to document everything. You sure about this, Evan? Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. I'm sure. The next evening, I arrived at my own house 15 minutes early. Everything looked exactly the same. The perfectly manicured lawn, the matching planters by the front door, the warm light spilling from the windows, but it felt like visiting a museum exhibit of my former life. Jenna was waiting in the living room, wearing the blue dress I'd always loved, her hair styled the way she wore it on our first date. She'd set out wine and cheese, lit candles, created the atmosphere for a romantic reconciliation. You look good, she said, standing to greet me. Rested. I feel rested. Amazing what a clear conscience will do for you. She flinched slightly at that, but recovered quickly. Evan, I know things have been difficult between us lately, and I take responsibility for my part in that. I've been stressed with work, and I haven't been as attentive to our marriage as I should have been. Attentive. Is that what we're calling it? I know you have concerns about Caleb, and I want to address those. You're right that I've been spending a lot of time with him, and I can see how that might look from the outside. She was good, I had to give her that, acknowledging just enough truth to seem honest while carefully avoiding any real admission of guilt. Go on. The truth is, Caleb has been going through a really difficult divorce, and I've been trying to be a supportive friend. Maybe I got too involved, maybe I crossed some boundaries, but it was never romantic. It was never about choosing him over you. Never romantic. Never. Evan, you're my husband. You're the man I chose to spend my life with. Yes, I made some mistakes, but they were mistakes of judgment, not betrayals of our marriage. She moved closer, reaching for my hands. I love you. I've always loved you. And if you can forgive me for being a less than perfect wife, I promise I'll do better. We'll do better. It was a masterful performance, delivered with just the right mix of contrition and sincerity. If I hadn't seen the photos, read the text messages, known the truth, I might have believed her. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened the folder Vance had sent me. Is this what never romantic looks like? I asked, showing her the photo of her and Caleb kissing in the hotel parking lot. Her face went white. Evan, I can explain. How about this one? Another photo, this one of them entering his apartment building, his hand on her ass. That's not what it looks like. Or maybe you'd prefer to explain these text messages? I scrolled through the screenshots, reading selected passages aloud. He is getting suspicious. I'm tired of sneaking around. You knew the situation when this started. She sank onto the couch, all pretense finally abandoned. How did you get those? Does it matter? The question is, how long did you think you could keep lying to me? It's not what you think. It's complicated. It's really not. You've been having an affair. You've been lying about it. You've been using me as a safety net while you figured out whether you wanted to trade up to Caleb. Tears started streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her, no desire to fix what she'd broken. I never meant for this to happen, she whispered. But it did happen. For months. And you made the choice to keep it happening every single day. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What happens now? Now? Now you get exactly what you deserve. At exactly 7:30, there was a knock at the door. Jenna looked confused, but I wasn't surprised. I'd been expecting this. Are you going to answer that? I asked. She wiped her eyes and went to the door, returning a moment later with Caleb Frost trailing behind her. He looked uncomfortable, like a man who'd walked into the wrong movie. Evan, he said, attempting a casual tone, I didn't know you'd be here. In my own house? Where else would I be? Jenna called me, said she was upset. I'm sure she did, just like she's been calling you for months. Just like she called you last night when she was supposed to be thinking about our marriage. Caleb looked at Jenna, then back at me. Look, man, this is awkward. Awkward? That's an interesting word choice. I would have gone with messed up, or maybe outright dishonest, but awkward works too. Evan, please, Jenna said, don't make this worse than it has to be. Worse? Jenna, you've been having an affair with your boss, lying to me about it, using me as your fallback while you figured out if you wanted to leave me for him. How exactly could I make this worse? Caleb stepped forward, and for a moment I thought he might try to play the hero. You don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. You're a recently divorced guy who decided to sleep with his married employee. She's a woman who decided her marriage vows were more like suggestions. And I'm the husband who was dumb enough to trust both of you? It's not like that, Caleb said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Help me understand how screwing my wife behind my back is actually some noble gesture. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say because there was no justification, no explanation that would make any of this acceptable. Here's what's going to happen, I said, looking at both of them. Jenna, you're going to pack your things and get out of my house. Caleb, you're going to help her, since you're so good at helping her with everything else. And then you're both going to live with the consequences of your choices? The house is half mine, Jenna said, finding her voice again. The house is in my name, bought with my money, before we were married. But don't worry, you'll get your share of our marital assets in the divorce, minus what you spent on hotel rooms with your boyfriend, of course. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You've changed. No, Jenna. I just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. I stopped making excuses for you. I stopped accepting less than I deserve. I walked to the front door and opened it. You have 1 hour to get your things and get out. After that, I'm changing the locks. They left together, Caleb's arm around Jenna's shoulders in a gesture that was probably meant to be comforting, but looked more like a man claiming his prize. I watched from the window as they loaded her suitcases into his BMW, as they drove away from the house we'd shared, from the life we'd built together, from the future we'd planned. Then I called Vance. Did you get everything? Every word, every gesture, every incriminating moment. This should make your divorce proceedings very straightforward. Good. Send copies to Tyler at Jenna's office. I think her colleagues deserve to know exactly what kind of person they've been working with. Already done. I also took the liberty of forwarding the evidence to Caleb's ex-wife's attorney. Apparently, he's been claiming he can't afford alimony payments while spending money on hotels and expensive dinners. I smiled for the first time in weeks. You're thorough. I'm professional. There's a difference. After I hung up, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of my marriage. Photos of happier times, wedding gifts from friends and family, the accumulation of 8 years together. Tomorrow, I would start the process of rebuilding my life. I would file for divorce, sell the house, maybe take that trip to Ireland I'd always wanted to take. I would remember what it felt like to trust someone completely, and I would be more careful about who earned that trust. But tonight, I just sat in the silence of my empty house and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace.